We're back and ready to pour more into your marriage. You're here on the right day. Call a friend and let them know it's time for another segment of Marriage Takes Work. We're back. We want to welcome you to another segment of Marriage Takes Work. We hope and pray that you have been intentionally working your marriage since our last broadcast. We have a great topic for discussion today, and I'd like to introduce our guests for the afternoon, Elder Darrick and First Lady Takia McGhee. How are you all doing?
Great.
Doing great.
Awesome.
Wonderful. So sometimes people decide for the wrong reason to enter into marriage. Some choose not to have an intimate relationship before marriage. And some are looking for someone to share bills with. Others don't want to be alone. Some feel that love is enough, and others may only want to start a family. Whatever their initial reasons are, my question is, did they really factor in the cost it would take to make their marriage work? So today our topic of discussion is marriage is not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, we will dig into the whys of this statement. It's not for everybody. There are some individuals who are clear about not wanting to get married, but they may not always explain their reasons why. What do you think could be their underlying reasons for a statement like that?
My first thought would be compromise.
Mm.
If you're not willing to compromise, then marriage is not for you. If you want to be selfish, then you may want to rethink it, because it's all about compromising, because you are not going to get your way all the time.
I would also say fear, right? Fear of either the unknown, fear because they witnessed it growing up, either through their parents or grandparents, and it wasn't the ideal situation. So they're afraid they will repeat that cycle. And so they made up in their mind, I'm not doing this.
Mm.
Right. And it's just, I'm not doing, I'm putting myself through this. I think compromise though is a strong one, right? It's just, I'm not sharing anything with anyone at any time.
And I think for me, if a person has not learned how to commit to anything,
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
how can they commit to a life with someone or marrying someone that they, have to share their lives together? That commitment is a tough responsibility, and,
Yes.
and so many in marriage today they don't want to commit to it.
Yeah.
Because in that commitment comes the work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so if I'm not wanting to work it, I can't commit to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't think people fully understand what it means to commit to a marriage or even to work their marriage, especially when they first get married, because when they be all caught up in the hype of the wedding, and now it has gotten so bad. We go on the bridal trip, the groom trip. We put so much emphasis on all of that stuff, but we never pay attention to what it's going to take for us to be successful after we spend all of this money.
Absolutely.
And so I think that people got to be serious about when they stand before God, the pastor, and the congregation, that what they are saying at that very moment is serious.
Yep.
They are stepping out of single life
Mm-hmm.
into married life.
Mm-hmm.
They are also working at leaving one life that they are used to, accustomed to, the only life they know, to go in and form a life with somebody else.
Yeah.
And you got to build new traditions from that point.
Yeah.
And I really believe that that's one of everything that everybody has said. I agree wholeheartedly. But on that day, that wedding day, they got to realize what they're committing to.
Which takes me back to, what do you do before you get to that point?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Said before, count up the cost.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You're paying all of this money for all of those other things that cost you, but it's going to cost a commitment to you.
Yeah.
It's going to cost some things to you that you may not want to give up.
Yeah.
So we need, as we sit with our premarital counsels and we sit with these couples, we need to really stress to them, it's going to cost you something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you to give. It's going to cost you to take. It's going to cost you to give up that selfishness that you may have, such that you can commit to this person that you say is going to be your lover for life. It's going to cost you something. And nothing in life is free. It's going to cost you something.
That's right.
I'm a strong proponent of premarital counseling, and I think premarital counseling exposes a lot of things, motives, intentions, but also educates a lot, right, on what to expect in scenarios, things of nature. One of my sessions that I do for premarital counseling is solely based on finance. I do a whole class on finances, and you'd be amazed at just that by itself exposes a lot, right? You have two individuals who have two different views on monies, how they approach, how they spend, how they discuss, things of that nature. And we do a whole session on that purposely to create that conversation. And amazingly, you can sometimes have argument even in premarital counseling because, she may be used to spending a large amount of money on certain things because she's been single, or he may be doing something with his money in that regard. And now I'm being told to try to work together toward a common goal, right? It becomes that friction in that regard. Truth of the matter is, marriage is not for everybody. And I think
it really is not.
It's okay to come to that realization, right? That listen, I'm not marriage material, or I don't want to be married. But I will also say, if you make up in your mind that marriage is not for you, then don't go around destroying somebody else's marriage.
Or their dream.
Or their dream marriage as well, right? I think that's also important as well, because sometimes that becomes the behavior too, is because you're not marriage material. Now you want to use your mouth to speak death to somebody else's dream and aspirations of getting married. And listen, some people have gone all the way through engagement, premarital counseling, wedding date, and they made a decision at the last minute, hey, I'm not doing this. Some people have gotten married and regretted getting married. You have all those scenarios that can be detrimental. But at the same point, it's also that realization that, listen, I like my life. I like living a certain way. I'm not trying to coexist with somebody else. I'm not trying to change who I am. If you're unwilling to really allow for yourself to grow and mature in the area, as Takia mentioned, that's going to be a hard challenge for you in that regard. People always say, it's 50-50. It's not 50-50. It had to be 100-100, right? You got to give her all, right? Flaws. And we were going through premarital counseling. I remember Pastor Walker making it. We were doing this worksheet, and he said, what's the number one thing you got to be able to do in your marriage? And we was talking about financing and he's like, no, number one thing is acceptance. You got to accept the fact that your future spouse has a past, is going to make mistakes, so on and so forth. You'll be able to start there together and work towards some, as you mentioned, build traditions, right? But you have to have those honest conversations before you get married, not after you get married. And so if you're not willing to have those conversations and make those changes, or even work toward those changes, then it's not for you. And that's okay if you can admit that on the front end versus destroying somebody's life on the back end.
And the world portrays perfection.
Yeah.
Yes.
And nobody's marriage is perfect. If I could say that, nobody's marriage is perfect. Yes, you're going to have disagreements because you're two individuals daily becoming one. Just because you stand in front of the preacher, that doesn't automatically make you one. It's a process. You are daily becoming one. We've been married over 20 years and we're daily becoming one because you transition. Seasons change. You first start off without kids. Some of us have kids. Kids are leaving the home, and you eventually become empty nesters. All of that. So you're always daily to becoming one.
That's really good.
Right.
So I'm coming past Darrick. Would there ever be a time in your counseling,
Yes.
as we go through all of those things that we need to make the couple aware of what they are getting into? And I think that's a big thing that we just hit the surface, but we need to let them know there's some work to be put in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever get to the point where you say to the couple after going through what I don't think you guys are ready right now, that you need to sit, consult God, and come back and let's work at this again? You ever think you get to a point?
So I will tell you this. So I never do premarital counseling without the couples completing my packet. I have a packet that I have. The first 4 pages of that packet is description, but also a lot of scriptures. And then there is a survey they both have to fill out. That's a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's intentional to be that way, number one. But number two, I can give you a large number of people who get that packet and never hear from them again, right? Because which is designed for that, number one. But number two, in the packet, and at the first session, they make it to the first session, I say in the packet in the first session, I hold out the right to tell you you're not ready to get married. You decide to proceed with the wedding. I have the right to say I'm not doing your wedding. And I make that very clear to them, because what happens in today's time is people come to the premarital counseling session with the wedding dates already scheduled. It's usually going to be 3 months or less away from it. So now they want you to rush them through and then check off the box. And so things are being discovered in premarital counseling that is detrimental to a future together. You point them out. They assume they can sex that away or store that away, be okay. And so I will say to any clergy who's listening now, who is legally allowed to do marriages, that you need to always make it known that you will refuse from doing somebody's marriage, but also tell them, here is why I think you all need to wait, right? Yeah. There's some things here that are problematic, that if you don't seriously address those things, become a situation in the long run. Now, people may not want to hear that. People may walk away and be upset with you. They're going to decide to their own thing. But here's a reality. God will give you discernment and therefore create exposure. And those who ignore that counsel you give them, they will at some point in the future come back and admit that, I should listen to you. And sometimes you're confirming what they already know. But I've had couples come to me literally who are calling, hey, man, I'm getting married this Saturday. Can you do my wedding? Absolutely not. I had a former member of mine call. He had a date scheduled in Thomasville. Well, hey, man, I was thinking about you, about to get married. I hadn't heard from this guy in 3 years. I wonder if you do my wedding. I cannot. Because what happens now is now you're trying to do a plug and play. Now you have a date, you have a bride, you have a location, you have a wedding party. Now you just need a preacher. Now you're trying to rent me to come in there. And so if I sign that form, I'm signing saying that I'm endorsing what you're doing, but I have reservations. And so I always hold that out. And we're very, very critical in our premarital counseling sessions, because we understand that marriage is ministry, right? You mentioned it earlier. People spend so much money on the wedding, but the actual wedding itself, once you get start to finish, it's like 15 minutes from start to finish. They spend so much time on the wedding and no time preparing for what the ministry of marriage looks like and what it's going to require of them. And so we try to make sure we're very honest with them on, hey, listen, right? Don't allow, because you're getting older, to be the reason why you want to get married. Don't let family pressure you into getting married. Like all those things are not good reasons why. And then you add into that, you start having kids in these marriages that are toxic. Now the kids' lives are being impacted. And so I'm very, very honest and upfront with them. I'm not trying to build my list of how many weddings I've done. I'm trying to make sure people are married and honoring the vows that they've made. And it concerns me, again, because we're looking at things through the lens of reality TV, where everybody wants that glorious photo on social media, but that's not reality of how marriage works. Your marriage, our marriage, we are where we are in our years of marriage, but not without trial and tribulations.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's important. Let me say one last thing too, and I'll be off this. Marriage, everybody. The reason why I believe my marriage still works, number one, is because God put us together. But number two is because we started out as friends first, right? We started out as friends. We built a friendship. Everything we had was based on the foundation of our friendship. Even when we went through trials, the fact of the matter is that I'm looking at my best friend and say, okay, what are we going to do in this situation? You got to have time to build that foundation. You can't date on Monday, be married 2 years later. And listen, sometimes people make it through. I get it. But most of the time, if you don't have a foundation that's going to uphold your marriage, it's not going to work. And if you're not willing to put that work in, then it's not for you.
Yeah, and that's good. And my other pet peeve is this. Like you said, we were definitely friends first, and in the process of being friends, we learned so much about each other. I think our formative years come into play. What kind of family did I come from, or what kind of family did she come from? And in that, we learn so much as to why a person does some of the things they do or act the way they do, because their formative years, what they learn from mama, daddy, grandmama, granddaddy, and we bring those things forward and sit them in your lap and say to you, are you gonna be able to deal with this? You know, and folk have an opportunity to say, that doesn't line up with what I would like to see in my marriage. And you get an opportunity to say and to talk about those things, because those formative years, man, we picked up some stuff that wasn't right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something, that Darrick was saying earlier regarding not marrying people and reserving the right to tell them. And so my question is centered around a lot of people, they have in their life, they plan that, by the time I'm such an age, I want to be married. And then they come in for premarital counseling, and you say to them, but I really don't think you all are ready. And it could be both of them. It could be one or the other. I don't really think you all are ready to get married right now. But then what happens? They go ahead and get married. Mm-hmm. And so 10 years later, they may end up in divorce court. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is the first 10 years of marriage are very difficult. I can almost say the first 17, first 25, But I know the first 10 can be very difficult because you're blending personalities. How do y'all feel? What do you think went wrong with those couples? Because I do believe that the ones that end up in divorce, they probably did not have premarital counseling, or the preacher married them anyway, or the preacher said, I won't marry, and they did it anyway. They did not take the extra time to really pursue getting to know each other, getting to see if I can accept you totally for who you are, good, bad, and ugly, or the indifferent.
Honestly, I'm removing the preacher from this, because honestly, sometimes, Ms. Whitfield, I think we see signs, but we're ignoring the signs because we have in our mind,
That's good.
I'm getting old. I know he hang out with his friends, but it's all right because he need time away with his friends. It's okay if he come in at 2:00. And then when you get married, it becomes an argument, but you've allowed things to happen. Good. Like a lot of the women that I talk to, that's my first question. Is this new behavior? Because half the time it's not new behavior. You've allowed it. So the person is accustomed to doing it. And then now it's become a problem because you're married. So sometimes it is not listening to the preacher, but most of the times it's people in a rush to be married and they see the signs, but they just ignore the signs. Or even as far as I got pregnant by him, so we have to get married. Yeah. It's just
go ahead, Q. Go ahead, Q.
Some of the things that we miss and some of the things we tell ourselves. It's our self-talks that we have with ourselves.
Okay. And I think something else that, to really back up what you're saying is people who live together first.
Yes.
You know, both of you are single, living in a single environment. At any time, you can get up and just move away and just say, you know what, I don't want to do this no more. Okay, so some of the behaviors that we do, we come and go as we please.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then so see what that did, it has already set up a false narrative for you to go into a marriage to think that you can do as you please.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so one of you jumped the broom and said, now it's time to work our marriage. And then the other one is saying, no, I can still do what I used to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? What's the difference now?
Yeah.
I was doing it then. Why can't I do it? Because you're married. You have somebody to be accountable to at this point. Okay, well, we got an issue now.
Yeah.
And I call it playing house, because basically that's what you're doing.
That's right. That's right.
And you're playing marriage because you want all the benefits of being married, but you're not married.
I think also you made a point earlier, Amon, that I think is important here when you mentioned about, you know, what happened, how to get to divorce. I think sometimes everything starts out well. I think the thing that couples I remember is you gotta keep putting that work in though, right? You sometimes, I mean, from a male perspective, it's easy for us to grow very content and comfortable. So me personally, I wasn't planning on getting married till I was at least 30 years old. That was what I told myself. I got married at 25, right? And so, and for no other reason, I want to get married at 30. I want to live life. I want to do some things, so on and so forth, right? But when you get married young, like I didn't come from successful marriages. My grandparents really was my only motto of marriage that'll work, right? So I had way more that didn't work out, and so when it got heated, walking away was a motto I had seen growing up, right, or heard about growing up, and so putting that work in wasn't necessary. It's just you just move on to somebody else. And I also had uncles who had wives and many girlfriends, and the wives knew about the girlfriends and they accepted their role in that. And so I watched all that drama as well. And I just knew I didn't want to repeat any of that. But the challenge became, it wasn't getting married, right? As we got married, it was, okay, now what do we do? What does this look like now once we get married? Kid, I never lived together before we got married. So our first time ever spending the night together was on our honeymoon. First time ever waking up together other than our honeymoon. When we first came home after we got married, our first night together as a married couple, I tried to put her out the house. I forgot we were married because I wasn't used to her being there. And she was used to jumping. We
need to go home, Takia.
We could jump up and leave because she lived at home with her mom before we got married. And so we had to adjust to all of that. But even like simple things like, you know, hey, your shoes don't belong there, right? Things that become small, petty arguments that can elevate to big things. But putting that work in, having those conversations. She mentioned about playing house. The thing I gotta remember, I hear guys will say, man, but I'm a grown man. I understand that, but conversation, you got to be able to communicate, right? There's something that's going on that's causing you frustrations, be able to communicate and not communicate once you get to a boiling point. Communicating early and often. You mentioned earlier, Pop, about family structure. One thing we talked about when we were dating was children. How many kids do we want to have? Okay, once we have kids, how we plan on raising our children, right? Because that model may be different based on upbringing as well. And then how do you involve and engage family? Like all of these things are real conversations. You cannot think you can sex every problem away. It just won't happen. At some point, my wife could tell you, for me, we got to be able to hold a conversation. We got to be able to just talk about whatever and have a conversation. And I don't care how good the sex is. If we can't talk, right, that's a point of frustration. I think a lot of times with couples, you mentioned about make it 10 years. I think some couples realize in year 2 it's over, but they're so determined to prove everybody wrong. They stay into something that they know is over with because they don't want Danny or Whitfield to be right about. They told me in premarital counseling we shouldn't have got married. I'm gonna prove them wrong. And so what happens then is you spend an extra 8 years trying to prove them wrong. When y'all living y'all life happily, they're over here miserable, right? Trying to act like everything is okay. They're posting things on social media with this ideal marriage, but behind closed doors, they're miserable. And then Lord forbid they put children in that misery, right?
Wow.
It can happen because you're trying to portray to an outward. My great frustration when it comes to premarital counseling and counseling couples is couples who we have counseled and they're going through critical moments in their marriage. And then they'll leave the session within 4 hours. They're on social media plastering these wonderful pictures of the two of them hold hands, walking across the beach, how great things are. It was just with you 4 hours ago, about to kill each other.
Right, right.
What's happening is you're competing between reality and social media fakeness. And that's what happens with couples, right? They last for so long because they want the world to believe they got this ideal marriage. Truth be told, they're both miserable. They just don't want to admit it. And I think the reality of it all is you have to be honest with those signs and say, listen, this just ain't working. It's not going to work unless we're going to put this work in.
That's it. That's it. Work. And some of them have they get to the point where they don't want to work.
No,
they don't want to work it. So that the best option is to walk away. And to me, when you walk away, I don't want to say coward, but I want to say you did not put in what you need to put in to make things work. You just it was an easy out for you, rather than looking at, like I say, count up the cost. I got this person to be my lover for life, and so am I ready to just walk away from that?
Yeah.
For some people that may be easy, but I think it would. For me, I would count up the cost.
Yeah.
All my good days will outweigh my bad days.
Come on now.
Yeah.
If I just look back at where we came from, I can't walk away. I'm going to continue to put the work in.
That's true.
Yeah. You know, my thing about that too is that when you choose to walk away, if children are in the picture, okay, so now you damage the children because you chose not to do what you needed to do. And it's always something about you that needs to be changed in order to make your marriage work.
Yeah. When
you cannot make your spouse and your family your priority, you already got a number one problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
If you put everybody else before your spouse and your family, you got a number two problem. If you put your family members and your friends before your spouse and your children, you got a number three problem.
That's good.
You just got problems all the way around, because the people that should be on the top of your leaderboard, that's your spouse and your children. So now you walk away thinking that I just can't deal with this no more, instead of changing.
Yeah.
Change is so easy. All you got to do is do it.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
Make the adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you all guys believe is the biggest interference an individual can bring into a marriage that lets you know they shouldn't be in it?
You said earlier.
I say attitude. The attitude that they bring in, you can hear it in their discussion. If they say, well, I'm a woman, so I can only go this route. Ain't no woman gonna tell me what to do. Ain't no woman gonna tell me where I can go. Compromise don't work in a marriage. And I have heard this, and I don't get it. How do you think compromise does not reside in a marriage? You know, some days you might say, Darrick, what you got for? Well, I think I want some fried chicken. You say, well, what you want? Well, I was just thinking about hamburgers and French fries. Well, let's do hamburgers and French fries. That's compromise.
What we got to eat?
Go to the hotel. What side of the bed you like to sleep on? That's compromise.
Yeah.
But see, we got to think about too. You really have to think about people's formative years, what they saw coming up,
Bottom line,
and what they received. Whether it was good or bad. And those are the changes that they have to make inside themselves. So that's my thing. That's what they bring.
Yeah, that's really good.
Or even if something happens, your first thought is to exit.
Yeah.
Like you're you're not ready. Marriage is not for you. If the first little thing pushes you over the edge and you're ready to walk out the door,
I'm out of here.
yeah, it's not.
I got 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
And
Right.
but the danger to that is that you run out of that and you run into another.
Exactly.
There you
So
go.
you're carrying that same baggage to every relationship you come to, unless you sit down and take that mirror and put it in your face.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, what is my part in this?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm about to tap into my Dr. Faye, right? It's also the unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
Right? Like you had some trauma in your life at some point that's been unresolved. And so you just continue to think, you know, I get with somebody, right? Now you're creating this savior complex, right? Now you want this person to fill voids and help resolve matters that they can't do. So when they come up short, and they will,
Yeah.
now you're mad at everybody else, but as you mentioned, but the person in the mirror, right? Because we don't want to do a self-assessment or evaluation of ourselves to figure out what the problem is. It has to be everybody else. I think it's selfishness. Yeah. It's the inability to be honest with yourself about yourself, right? That Key and I had this conversation years ago. I haven't done this in a long time. I probably will never do it again, actually. But we were coming on a sabbatical. So I said, hey, listen, if there was one thing you could change about me, what would it be? And I remember she paused. She was like, I just get one? And I was like, whoa. So she was like, well, start answering. I'm like, and you realize like there's certain questions you shouldn't ask because you can't handle the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because the person is telling you you're not perfect. The reality of that is her answer also speaks to the fact that there's always something you can do to make yourself better or improve yourself. Mm-hmm. And so if you are unwilling to be honest with you about you, right, then you're never going to, because your problem in your marriage can't always be on the other person, right? It has to be something that you are doing or something that you've allowed to take place for a period of time. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to own in that regard. And I think when you've been single for a long time or living on your own for a long time, there's selfish ways that we have that we don't want to be honest about, right? We want things a certain way. We don't want that to be changed at all. And sometimes our petty arguments are based on small, minuscule situations that really shouldn't get to what they become, but they become that way. But I go back to what you guys said. I think the formative years are a major problem that we really don't talk about in our relationships and our marriages, right? Because we come into that with something that we formed from our upbringing, something that we saw that either we are so committed to never doing that we become workaholics not to have that happen, or we've accepted that that's the reality and now we become that person. And those things are problematic in a major, major, major way. And you know, I didn't marry my mom, so I don't want you being like my mama.
Okay.
I don't want to be your mama either. Yes.
No, you don't. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I tell you. Yeah. Well, what closing words would you leave with our viewers if you had to tell them or allow them to tell you something that would make you feel that they are or not ready?
Please.
Only thing I can think of is don't allow the chaos of your past to disturb the peace of your future.
My God, that's good.
Ooh, loud.
And we can
a lot of times, like he said, it's unresolved issues, it's unhealed trauma. Man. It's the brokenness of not having our father present or not having our mother present. And then we bring that into the marriage and we want that spouse to be that missing piece that we did not have. Right. And that is not their responsibility.
And that's so good.
Man.
Good.
Only thing I will say, and I say this to the women of God, because I get this lie as a pastor. So I want to say it to them very loudly. It's not a sin, nor is it a punishment if you are not married at this point in your life. There is a ministry called Single, and it could be a blessing in that regard as well. sometimes you want to be married so bad that you don't realize that God actually is keeping you and you're not even recognizing in that regard. And so what I would say to those is, listen, marriage is not for everybody. And so if you're not married right now, seek the Lord, but also operate in that peace and that joy that God gives you. Because that joy should not be attached to something else in that regard, man. But what you said, peace of mind is bliss.
I know.
It's blissful, and understand that.
It is.
Amen. Amen.
It's all about peace.
That's it.
And I love the way Kia said that, the chaos.
That was profound.
That was the chaos of our life. We can only have as much chaos as we allow. And on no given day should anybody take us out of our peace.
Never.
Exactly.
You know, I remove myself from situations where I feel people are trying to remove me from peace. And that's something that they need to realize. If you are with someone and day in, day out, they have you in an unpeaceful place, that is reason not to be there. I'm sorry.
God. My God.
Yeah.
My God.
Well, Roy and I would like to invite you to go to Amazon.com and order your copy of our newly released book, Daily Marital Devotionals for Lifetime Lovers. And you'll find a nugget and a scripture for 365 days of the year, along with an area in which you to write down your own personal reflections. This book will bless you, your spouse, and your marriage, because it deals with daily how we can have self-reflections, which are really crucial to us being who God has purposed us to be.
Well, we're at that part of the day. And as we close this segment, we'd like to let you know how you can reach out to us. You can inbox us at Danny and Rhoda Whitfield or Marriage Takes Work on Facebook, or you can email us at marriagetakeswork2016@gmail.com. Remember this, if you missed any segments, you can always go back to Danny and Rhoda Whitfield or Marriage Takes Work on Facebook or YouTube.
We hope you have gained some nuggets today and may apply to your marriage. Now do us a favor and share this broadcast with your friends and those who are married or single. Remember to turn to each other and never against each other. With that being said, we'd like to thank our very, very, very special guest, Elder Darrick and First Lady McGhee, for joining us here today on Marriage Takes Work. We remind you, our listening and viewing audience, to love hard and work that marriage.
Thank you for tuning in with us today. Now don't forget to join us next week for another segment of Marriage Takes Work. Until then, keep this in mind. You can only reap what you have sown. So love hard to nurture and work your marriage.